You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Garibaldi Red. I'm Matt Davis, your host, and we should have been talking about yet another win, I guess, but this is Nottingham Forest and never goes to plan. So I'm joined by former Reds defender, a Reds legend, I suppose, Steve Chettle, to kind of look back on that game a little bit and talk about Steve's career and what he's up to now with Basford United in management. So thanks for joining us, Steve.
No problem, Matt.
I suppose after the Leeds game, everyone thought this was the year, and then Forest played so poorly against Charlton. Even though I know you didn't see the game, you kind of caught up on it. Do you still think this might be the year after 20 years of exile from the Premier League?
I think success this year would be getting to the playoffs. I think automatic promotion is a big ask, but when you're round about it and you have an opportunity to get into those automatic places, it does seem a bit disappointing. Obviously, the result last night after the Leeds game, but that's the Forest way. You go 2 steps forward, you have to take a step back.
Can you understand, as a manager as well, how a team can be so good in one game and so poor in another? I know Forest made some changes in force and a couple otherwise. From a coaching point of view, can you understand how a group of players can underperform so much after playing so well?
They're human beings for one. The euphoria of the game obviously leads on Saturday from doing so well. Changes that the management's made, and I think he's admitted that he possibly might have got it wrong last night. That's just human beings, that they can't perform that level all the time. I think the ones that do perform that level all the time are the ones that are top of the Premier League, as opposed to fighting for playoff place in the Championship.
And because it's Nottingham Forest, I guess we wouldn't be surprised if they went to West Brom and won now. Just the way.
Well, every chance. Like I said, the Leeds game was huge. They played really well. The spirit and the application of the workload was fantastic, and they go to West Brom and hopefully the same result will happen. A 2-0 win would be lovely.
It's been 21 years now since the Reds played in the Premier League. You played in that team. Can you believe that it's a club of that stature has still been outside the Premier League for so long?
No, but obviously the club went down to League One at one point as well, so that was a real low, and had to fight their way back to getting to where they are today with some consistency and some stability, which is a massive focus for Forest at the moment. And having Sabri there as a manager, hopefully will finish the season for the first time in for God knows how long as a manager to start and finish the season, which is fantastic. If
we go back, obviously you played 400 odd games for the Red as a 14, 15-year-old growing up in Nottingham. Could teenage Steve Chettle imagine you'd have played that many games for the club?
No, I didn't imagine playing one. 14, 15, I'd signed schoolboy forms and was training with the first team at 15, going in on holidays with the team that would won European Cups, which is a bit scary. But when you're around it at 16 and 17 years old, being an apprentice, and then training with the first team and playing the reserves at 16 with my boyhood era John Robertson in the same team, you think, crikey, this is exciting. Made my debut at 18, and like I say, it was 400 plus league games and over 500 appearances. It's something I'm very, very proud of.
Do you still recall that kind of first meeting, walking into the change room when there's John Robertson there, Gary Birtles is still there?
We weren't allowed in that dressing room to start with. We was in the other dressing room, so they changed in the home team dressing room. We were in the away team dressing room. I was on tea duty for 2 years for the first team. That was my role with at the football club, to make tea for the first team. And people like Ian Bowyer, who is a real strong figure in the dressing room. Gary Birtles was there, Gary Mills, these are people. Paul Hart was there. These are real strong characters, and you had to stand up for yourself and be strong yourself. But no, it was really, really character building.
No, how tough was it being an apprentice? So you had to. It's a different world now for Premier League clubs, but cleaning boots, doing all that kind of stuff. Was that a real graft as a kid?
It was, but it was something. I don't know whether it's just me, but I really enjoyed my apprenticeship. I enjoyed cleaning boots. I enjoyed being tidy. I enjoyed the workload of what it entailed. We were in first thing in the morning. We were the last ones to leave. We trained. I was playing football and I was getting paid. That was the first year of the YTS scheme.
Yeah.
So a grand total of £27.50 in for the first year. But like I say, it was really character building, and it stood me in good stead for the rest of my career.
Do you remember your debut, crystal clear or not?
I remember both debuts. My first appearance was away at Chelsea. I think I came on for Lee Glover and played right wing. and got told as the basic instruction by the gaffer to go and play right wing like a centre back, which is simplicity, shall we say. But my first start was the day before my 19th birthday away at Norwich. Gary Fleming wasn't fit to play, and I played right back for that game, and played right back for 6 months after that as well, which was a bit of an alien position for me, being very, very predominantly left-sided. But like I say, it was really good, and it was a start of a really good career.
Was there a point where you thought, right, this is me now for my career, I made it, or is there no kind of light bulb moment like that? It just kind of happened?
Not really. I think every year at the start of the season, new people came in to play, because I was predominantly obviously a centre-back. New people came in every year to play in that position. It was always one of those where you had to scrap and fight for your place, which I did do, and obviously managers picked me, which was a big plus for myself. But every year was the same. Even when Brian left and Frank came in, it was the same position again. I had to fight for my place. Went to a pre-season with Frank not knowing too much about me, and had to fight for my place again, even though I've been in the team for 5 years.
Everyone's got their kind of Brian Clough stories. I mean, what was he like to work with day to day? Did that aura ever kind of wear off as you'd been around him for a few years?
No, not at all. Obviously, he was he's a legend, a cult hero, whatever you want to call him, an icon at Nottingham Forest, and he always will be, and rightly so. But no, you were never really settled with him. If you thought that he thought you were getting a bit above your station, he'd come down like a ton of bricks. And if you thought you were having a rough time, he'd make you feel a whole lot better about yourself. So pre-psychologists and everything else, and Brian Clough did the whole thing. He was the complete manager, psychologist, mentor, father figure, whatever you wanted to call him.
What was it like when the ton of bricks came down then?
Yeah, it was tough. They weren't really that often. We were in a really quiet dressing room, which was really low key. He kept everything really simple, but you knew when the gaff wasn't pleased. He didn't forget anything, and he could bring things up 6 months later that happened, and he literally remembered everything. So yeah, there were few and far between, but you did listen, obviously.
How different was he to the other managers you worked with, just in terms of how he dealt with players? Was it really that different or not?
No, he just dealt with people as people. Everybody, he spoke to as individuals and knew everybody from back to front, inside out. That's how good he was at his job. But obviously when you work with other people have other strengths as well. But obviously my first impression of a manager was Brian Clough.
Yeah.
And people always want to speak about him, for obvious reasons. And it was one of those surreal moments, really, having him as your first manager.
What was it like? Do you remember meeting him for the first time, and how, I guess you were nervous?
Very nervous. We met him in the old trophy room, and myself and Phil Starbuck were just about to sign our apprenticeship forms. And Brian always liked to joke, and he said, "Oh, lads, all right, lads, how are you? Have you stolen anything yet?" And I obviously said no, because I was a bit petrified. And Phil wisely or not said, "Yeah, I've took an ashtray already." so it was petrifying. But when you first walk in there every day, you used to hear the dog coming. Dell used to go down the corridor, so you used to hide in the boot room because you knew you had to walk the dog if the gaffer found you. But no, they were really good days.
What was it like in that team? I mean, there's a few different Forest teams you played for. I mean, you came close to winning quite a few things. You played in Europe. Yep. I mean, how good was it to be at the club around that time?
Well, there was kind of two eras that I played in. We played in the late 80s, where we were at League Cup finals, the massive ZDS Trophy and the Simod Cup. We won the Mercantile Credit Classic, the League Centenary Trophy. And we lost in the FA Cup final. The downsides of that were obviously the relegation when Brian retired, and then the next wave was when Frank came in. Frank came in and had a lot to do. The game had changed. The Premier League had started. Frank made some really good signings, and we finished third in the league, which was madness, and qualified for the UEFA Cup, the old Europa Cup now. So, yeah, that was a really changing of the guard, but it was really, really good and really, really a lot of fun. The UEFA Cup, even the UEFA Cup ties.
You scored in the UEFA Cup games. I should have researched this better. You scored in the UEFA Cup, didn't you?
Yeah, I scored away at Bayern Munich.
That was it, yeah.
Yeah, we were 1-0 down. We got back to 1-1. We lost the tie 2-1, and obviously they were two legs. And we really fancied our chances of getting back to the City Ground. We'd beaten everybody at the City Ground, or not been beaten, shall we say, at the City Ground in the campaign. We started the game really well. I think we've had a goal disallowed from Colin Cooper, and then they scored just before half time. We went chasing the game, and they absolutely picked us to pieces and battered us 5-1 at home.
What was it like playing in Germany in a stadium like that and against? They would have
it was the Munich. It was the Olympic Stadium where Trevor Francis scored the winning goal against Malmo, and I'd scored in the same end as Trevor Francis, on the same pitch, and it's something that. No, I'm really, really proud of. Even though we lost the game, it's something that people want to talk about, and I'm quite happy talking about it because I didn't score many goals anyway. So it was a bit of a surreal moment again.
That was a great team, to be fair, wasn't it? Because that was coming off the back of finishing third in the Premier League, wasn't it? With Stan and Brian Roy. I mean, that was a kind of a special side at a special time.
Yeah, well, there was, we had Brian, obviously, that he'd signed, who played in the World Cup for Holland. Woney was still there, Stoney was there, Stewart, Colin Cooper was there, Alf-Inge Haaland, and it was a really, really good team. We did really well to finish third in the league. We won away at Manchester United that year as well, when they were a fantastic team. It was a really, really big achievement.
Did you kind of look at some of the goals that Collymore scored and the combination he had with Roy and think unbelievable? It
was crazy. I've said before who was the best player you played with at Forest, and people obviously associate Forest with some fantastic players like Stewart and Des that I played with, but Stan by far is the best player that I've played with at Forest. He could have been what I class as the English equivalent of the original Ronaldo. The goal he scored against Wimbledon at home, the goal he scored against Manchester United on the TV, the first game I think it was when the ground was renovated, were unbelievable. And he just could do something spectacular out of nothing, and an absolutely magnificent footballer.
What was it? I mean, you must have been gutted when he left then. Obviously, going to Liverpool is an opportunity you probably wouldn't have turned down yourself, I guess, but it must have been tough when you lose some of those players from that team and try and rebuild again. Yeah,
it obviously is. After that, the next wave of the next great striker was Pierre Van Hooijdonk arrived as well. So we've played with some really, really good strikers, but it's something that Stan couldn't really turn down, going to Liverpool, fantastic football club, and but Stan's career finished early in my opinion.
What was Van Hooijdonk like to play alongside us? There's the whole strike thing, but I remember watching him scoring some fantastic free kicks, fantastic goals.
He played up front with Kevin. We got promoted out of the Championship with Dave Bassett, and Pierre was at the forefront of that with Kevin himself, scored some unbelievable goals, especially free kicks, and he was a really good footballer. What he did was personal. When he was promised things by the board that we were going to invest in the club and people are sold and they didn't. And in his eyes, he thought it was the right thing to do by going on strike. I don't think it's the right thing to do personally. I had a phone call from him saying he wanted to come back and apologise to the players because he wanted to come back and play. So we had to face the wrath of people like Woney and Stoney when they questioned, what was you thinking about your actions? But no, he's a really good footballer, and he has to live by the decision he made by doing what he did.
When you have kind of players who are touched by genius, like some of those players were, they kind of come with a bit of baggage, I guess, don't they? Is that you have to accommodate them in a dressing room, do you?
Yeah, you have to put up with certain traits that you don't, you wouldn't really like in other people, but that's a footballer. You're not going to get along with 20 people in any walk of life, or you work with somebody in the office that you don't generally get on with all the time, but they're teammates, and you have to work along to get, the best work ethic and the best results you can.
What was that season like at the end of the Premier League? Did it feel a bit doomed when, Kevin sold in that summer and things happen? You don't really have the side you want going into the Premier League, I guess.
No, the two times when we got relegated out of the Premier League, it was a bit strange because we'd won the first game of the season.
Yeah.
And Mark Crossley, in his wisdom, said, "Lads, I fancy us this year." And 2 years on the bounce when he said that, we got relegated. So we just told Norm to just keep quiet after that. But we weren't really ready for the last year, when Brian was there, and then obviously we weren't really ready for the other year when we got relegated also.
And then in that last year, Ron Atkinson comes in, and what was that like?
It was a bit topsy-turvy. The whole year was a bit of a mess, really. And Ron came in, obviously had a great track record to try and firefight, what was, maybe the inevitable, really. It was interesting, shall we say. Frank Ron had his own ways of doing things. He enjoyed playing a five-a-side, even though he was in his...
Oh, he played still?
He played still on the left wing. Yeah, right. Played on the left wing and five-a-sides, and obviously thought he was the best player, and he had his own way of doing things, but they didn't work for us, shall we say?
No. If we go back to the kind of the better days, I suppose, was that 91 FA Cup final, does that still stick with you? Because the way it panned out on the day, I think sort of everything went against you in a sense, didn't it, with Gaza and the own goal and all that kind of stuff.
I think if Gaza would have stayed on the pitch, I think we would have won. But if the referee would have done what he should have done, Gaza should have got sent off anyway. The first two challenges were way beyond reckless. He's nearly taken Gary Parker's chest off with a straight leg, and he's nearly taken his own knee out and Gary Charles' knee. Where Stuart scores from a free kick, but Norm saves a penalty, and you think, wow, this is our year. Especially for Brian, who hadn't won the FA Cup. But now we conceded obviously from Paul Stewart, and then Des scores the own goal, which makes us lose the FA Cup final. But it's something that I don't really remember too much about. You get caught up in the whole euphoria of the FA Cup, and I've never really watched the game back. I've seen the goals on various platforms, but it's something I don't remember too much about. It was a really disappointing day for us.
Is that because it's too painful to watch back? You just don't want to see it?
No, I've just haven't got around to watching it.
When you lined up in the tunnel before the game, do people look over at Gaza and think, he's wired and fired up? Absolutely.
I played 21s with Gaza in Toulon, and I knew what he was like as a person, and he's beyond excitable. And obviously he's had his demons as well, but it was wild. He was bouncing off the walls in the tunnel, and he's one of these people who go around, if you weren't in his kind of world, he'd try and make you in his world by punching you and getting you excited and shouting come on in your face. But not everybody responds to stuff like that, and we just left him to it. But it was exactly the same in the tunnel at Wembley, and it showed he was a tad excitable for the first 10 minutes of the game.
Did you think something's going on here? He's going to do something?
No, he was just normal.
That's how he always was.
He was like that. He'd probably do that one week and be a genius like he could be on the pitch, but that's just his character.
How did that hurt the team going into the next season, do you think?
I don't know whether there was a bit of a hangover or not. Like I say, it all seems a long time ago, Matt, now. And you try and recall all these various parts of your footballing career, which lasted obviously 14 years at Forest, and there's a lot of things that you can fall back on trying to remember, and some of them I don't.
No.
I speak to Norm regularly, and Norm remembers literally everything. He's like the gaffer, and Norm's stories of the gaffer are fantastic, but I don't remember as much as Norm. So obviously you'll probably know more because you've read up on stats and everything else more than I do.
When Frank left, you moved into that kind of different era. What was it like who came in after Frank? Oh, my mind's gone blank.
Oh, Harry came in.
Yeah, I mean, he was another character. He had a lot of success.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Harry was one of these managers who got teams out of the Championship, or the old First Division that it was. Again, he set up a team really, really well. We had the nucleus of a really good side already, and brought in some additional people. But then we got out of that, and it was hard again in the Premier League. And Harry was, when I left in '99, when I was told I wasn't really needed anymore, I sent an SOS out to Harry, who was at Barnsley, and said, Harry, I'm not wanted around here anymore. Can I come up for a month on loan? So I went on loan for a month to Barnsley in '99, the early 2000, and then we got to the playoff final that year. We got beat by Ipswich in the Premier League playoff final. But again, Harry was really good to me, set teams up well, and is one of these people who can get people out of that league into the main league.
Did it hurt the way you left Forest? Because yourself, Ian Woe, and a couple of that generation, you were shoved out, really, weren't you?
Yeah, we were probably the end of the line, shall we say. And David Platt had obviously come in, and his remit was probably to build something that he wanted, and we didn't fit purpose, which is fine. He did it in a very honourable way and said, listen, if you can find yourself a club, you can leave now, which I did. But no, I had 14 really good years there, and at some point people leave football clubs. It's very rare that somebody goes from being 16 to 35 just playing at one football club all their life. It would have been a dream, but it wasn't. And I had 2.5 really good years at Barnsley. Then I went to Grimsby, went to Burton Albion, and played Ilkeston, and stopped playing myself. So I don't really miss playing, because I chose to stop playing myself when I got to age of 36.
Just kind of the lastly on your career at Forest, history's really harsh on Platt in terms, well, not harsh necessarily, how fans judge him. He's not liked. You listen to a few players talk about afterwards, they talk about, well, he was a great coach, he brought new methods in, he was perhaps ahead of his time in that, but he wasn't necessarily the best manager. I mean, what are your kind of recollections of
I completely agree. I thought he was one of the best players that we had in training, even though he's the manager. I don't think he played himself enough when he probably should have. His coaching methods were fantastic. The first pre-season we had were way above anything I've ever done. We were working from heart rate monitors.
Yeah.
He brought in proper nutritionists. We all sat down to eat at lunchtime. for some really good meals. Nobody went home anymore. They just stopped for lunch at work. But like I say, some of his management decisions on how he spoke to people, in my eyes, weren't great. But that's him as a person. And like I say, he did the honourable thing with me and let me go move on to new things.
What was it like pulling on a different? I mean, Barnsley playing red, but what was it like putting on a different red shirt after all those years for that first time?
Yeah, it was strange.
Yeah.
It was strange. Obviously, driving. I wasn't just driving across Nottingham anymore. I was going up the motorway to get to Barnsley. But I knew some people up at Barnsley already. Obviously, the manager was a big part of why I went there. But no, for 2.5 years, I really enjoyed my time up there. Still speak to people up there, and it's a really good club.
I remember that playoff final against Ipswich.
Yeah.
You got kind of blown out of the water in the end, didn't you?
In the end, we went 1-0, scored a penalty. We missed a penalty just before half time.
And Royster scored a hat trick or something like that? I remember.
No, I think Tony Mowbray scored. I think Jono played in that game, wasn't it? David Johnson, Jimmy Gilton, and all that kind of, and Mark Venus. It was a bit of a tough one to take, really. And I played alongside Chris Morgan, who was, played a long time at Barnsley.
He looks a bit scary.
Chris Morgan is scary. He's still scary now. He's got the hardest handshake I've ever had in my life. But he said, after that, he spoke to me after the game and said, "How do you recover from something like this?" I said, "You'll learn from it." He said, just remember how this feels, and you'll grow from it from there. And he had a really good career.
Do you think, because you played so long at the top, a bit like Steve Bruce and never played for England, you played under 21s, do you think perhaps you were a bit unlucky in that sense not to get closer?
No, not at all. People have asked me this before. I said, were you unlucky not to play for England? No, because they were better players than me. You're talking Steve Bruce who didn't get an England cap, and myself, we had Tony Adams, Terry Butcher, Des, for example, all better than myself. So no, I was really lucky to captain the under 21s and have 13 caps for England at that level. And I'm fortunate to do that. So no, I don't feel like I've missed out at all. You
still have all those caps tucked away somewhere at home? Then?
I don't have any. My parents have them all. I don't have anything at home. I did a podcast with Matt Ford for Reservoir Red Dogs, and he was on about, why don't you have anything hanging up, shirts and things. So, because when I get home on me, when my kids were little, they don't look at the shirt and say, "Oh, my daddy's a footballer. It's just my dad. I need feeding. I need to go out. I need to do this." So I have nothing at home which resembles anything what I was. It's what I was then. It's not who I am now.
So were you someone who went home after a win or a loss and you properly parked football at the front door, and then it was just completely back to normal?
You back. You finish on a Saturday. You go home. Whether you go out with teammates for dinner on a Saturday night, you still talk about the game. But Sunday was normal. We had kids, myself and Kerry. I'm back to work on Monday morning. The cycle starts again. So
you play kind of the last few years. You say you went to Grimsby, you went to Burton. Was that a desire to keep playing? Then even though you were dropping down the leagues?
I don't know. It was a desire. People just didn't renew my contract at the end of the year, so I had to go find something else. So after Barnsley, I went to Grimsby for a season, and then I only had a season at Grimsby. Went to Burton Albion with Nigel Clough, which was part time. They were playing in what is now the conference. So that was just 2 nights a week, and I found really bizarre having nothing to do during the day. And then I had a year at Burton. Nigel again wanted to go younger. I was 35. And then I had a year at Ilkeston Town when I finished playing with Phil Stant. Got promotion, got to 36. I wasn't going to get through a season without struggling with my back, because I'd had a back problem for years. So I just decided to stop playing. It was a whole lot easier. And like I say, I don't miss it because I've chosen to stop that feeling of wanting to play on a Saturday afternoon. I don't miss that at all.
You wouldn't have played in the Man United Cup tie for Burton then? That was
we lost to Hartlepool in the first round proper when I was at Burton. That was live on the TV. I was at Burton. It was great.
That's a good club though, isn't it? Because I've used to work around that area. They've got a great chairman. And would you have played at the Pirelli? Ben Robinson? Would you have played at the Pirelli? Was that built?
No, that was before. I played at the one before. I was. So we used to turn up on a Tuesday and Thursday night with Gary and Bing and Garnes, and just do training sessions like I used to do when I was a kid with his dad. It was like going back 20 years, but like I say, Nigel's been really successful and he's still doing really well now with them. Yeah, you can't believe that club's played in the Championship. To keep them in the Championship is unbelievable. That's like qualifying for the Champions League. For them, a small town club like Burton, who've got, like I say, some really good people running it, and Nigel's doing a fantastic job again. So when you finished, you didn't go straight into coaching, did you? Was there a bit of a there was probably a 6-month gap where I did the usual things of when players stopped playing. I went on holiday at Christmas. I'd never been away at Christmas and New Year, and then got my golf handicap down a bit more and enjoyed doing that. But after 6 months, I was bored.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to do. I did a bit of painting and decorating around the house and did it for other people that, because I had nothing to do. Then my son got involved at Forest with the under-10s, Callum, and I went to watch him at the Nigel Doty Academy, which was just Wilford Lane then.
Yeah.
And I thought, surely there's something I can do to give something back to the game. I asked about how get involved. They said you have to go away and do your coaching badges, and I was petrified. I'd not done anything
You've
like
not been in a classroom for quite a while.
No, it's been a long time. So I went right back to the beginning, did level 1, took my son's B team, shall we say, at Priory Celtic for half a season, and then went through my badges and worked through my academy system at Forest from under 10s right up to under 23s. And the first group that I had was with Will Hughes, who was in, Jordan Smith was in that group. So yeah, there's some good players in that group already.
Yeah, I mean, you look at players you've worked with who are in the side now, and players who've gone like Jamal Lascelles and people like that. But I mean, is a core thing about them like Worrell and Tyler Walker that they're good. Well, we're going to say good kids, good men. Is that a fair thing to say about them?
The academy system at Forest was fantastic. They brought up people really well, and they were looked after really well, and it's all about respect and hard work. And especially people like Joe, who came into this late. Joe Worrell spoke at Baseford United just after Christmas, because we have 6-month appraisals at Baseford just like you do at other academies. And I found Joe's appraisal among my records on my computer, and I printed it off. And some of the kids were disappointed in their grades at Baseford's Academy, saying, I've only got C's/D's where there's room for improvement. So I contacted Joe and said, listen, Joe, I've seen your appraisal and you're full of C's and D's in your appraisal. Will you come and just speak to our kids and tell them what it entails to be a professional footballer? So Joe went, of course I will. One, because he's a good person, and two, I've known him for a long time. And he just told people how it is and what they've got to do to try and get a career out of football. Because I don't think the kids at Baseford, one, know who I am because of the age discrepancy between the two of us. And two, they don't believe me, what it takes to be a footballer. So Joe just came in and spoke really, really well. And that's what kind of person Joe is. And Tyler's exactly the same. Obviously, he's done his apprenticeship now, saying lower leagues, and come back and scored the goal against Leeds, which I was delighted for him. But they're just really, really good kids. Well, young men now. They're not kids anymore.
Did you, well, even though you gave Joe C's and D's, did you see a pro in there? You probably did with Tyler. Sounds like he was always...
Well, Tyler had a break. Tyler was, I think he was in the academy early. Then he had a break for a couple of years. Went to play for All Whites, for Clifton All Whites. Then came back into it later. So Joe and Tyler were both in the same under-15s group that I was coaching. And Tyler at times played centre-back. He was fantastic at centre-back. And Joe's always had the biggest heart, Joe. I think he realises that hard work over talent, will work as well. So I'm not saying Joe's not talented, by the way. I'm just saying that Joe's work ethic is fantastic, and he's prepared to do whatever it takes to gain a really, really good career. Going up to Rangers, I think, stood him in good stead as well. But no, Joey's been fantastic this year, and he's rightly getting really, really good ratings.
Do players have to have that kind of inner steel and maturity and be good people to make it, or can someone make it in the game just based on talent, do you think, or not?
I think some can. I think we're very fortunate if you can just make it on talent. But if you are a really good character in the first place, you stand a good chance of succeeding. Having a good work ethic in the first place is vitally important, and both of those have that. So
how did you end up actually in management from coaching? What was the route to that?
Well, I was at Nottingham Forest. I was coaching under 18s under Nick Marshall with Ian Jess and Steve Sutton. I got promoted to the under 23s when Jesse left. Jesse went on a sabbatical and went travelling the world. I don't think he's come back yet. So I was doing the 23s, and then I was obviously working under Billy Davis when he was at the club for the second time, and I didn't see myself having a coaching pathway to get around the first team. So the assistant manager and academy manager's role came up at Ilkeston Football Club, as it was then, just up the road from where I am, and it was something I was interested in, just to try and cut my teeth in doing what I'd been involved in for so long. So I went up there with Kevin Wilson, ran a really, really good academy program. which Shay Adams came from, funnily enough, who's now playing Premier League. So it was a good academy system. The first team did really well. We lost in the playoff final of the Northern Premier League, which Baseford are in now. After the second year, I left there and became assistant manager at Nuneaton in the Conference North after they just got relegated out of the National League. And then after that, I got offered a role at Notts County, as well as being the Ilkeston town manager. So it was a roller coaster from being so steady for so long to the turnover of clubs in the last 4 or 5 years has been a bit mad, really. And now I find myself for the first time proper running an academy and managing the first team at Baseford United.
Non-league football's a bit mad in general. I think you're probably lucky where you are at Baseford now to have a stable club, but you've worked at some clubs where the proverbials hit the fan and there's some odd characters around and you have to swim against the tide the whole time. I mean, what's that like to be in amongst that mess?
Yeah, it's tough. There's people who run football clubs, like I say, again, have their own ideas and how they want things to be done, whether it's through what they've done in their own business or how they do things in their own personal life. Some things you don't agree with, but sometimes you have to bite your tongue and get on with it because you're employed by somebody. I was at Ilkeston Football Club when that went out of business. I was in the changeover of ownership at obviously Nuneaton Borough as it was then. Nuneaton Town, sorry, as it was then. Now it's Nuneaton Borough. Went to Ilkeston Town when Mr. Hardy was involved there. I was at Notts County when Mr. Hardy was there, and they were entertaining times, shall we say.
And now you're at Baseford. And you've got a very like Alan Hardy, a very ambitious chairman, but he seems like he knows what he's doing. But he set you a hell of a job. It's clear. They're ambitious. They want to get promotion. What's it like working at Baseford these days? It's
really good. The chairman's been really good to me. The chairman's obviously taken the club from being at rock bottom when he took it over himself, and the club have got 5 promotions in 7 years from various managers. And he's set as the task of trying to get into National League in the next 4 years, which is a big ask because obviously the leagues are really tough that we're in. But the infrastructure at Baseford is really, really sound. We've got a state-of-the-art 3G pitch, which the juniors can play on every night. The first team train on. The academy runs on the daytimes there. And we have 3 outfield grass pitches and a floodlit training pitch. So the facilities down there are unbelievable, and the chairman's a really, really good man with the club at the forefront of everything he does.
And you've gone about building a side, that's a local core with some names that Forest fans will know, like Matt Thornhill. Hardcore fans will know, like James Reed and people like that. And you've got some decent players there.
We've got, I took my son from Alfreton, who's contacts about Alfreton, who's playing in the Football League 2 years ago with Peterborough. Jack Thomas, who's played in the Football League with Mansfield Town. We've got people who've played at high levels in the Conference North. And the majority of these people have been together for a while now, and they got promotion 2 years ago out the Evo Stick South to get into the Northern Premier League. We sat just behind the leaders at the moment who are South Shields, who are full-time and have a fan base of 1,500 plus every week at home. So it's tough to compete, but, we're having a go.
What's it like working with your son? Does he call you gaffer and all that kind of stuff? Does anyone call you gaffer? Do you insist on that?
No, I don't. They call me Chet. So I'm not big on. They can call me whatever they want within reason. There's not much shouts of dad going across the dressing room. It's not something that we've spoken about. But I've obviously worked with him at 2 clubs before, and then obviously he went to the Football League for 2 years, and it was good watching from afar and how much he developed. But it's something that's not really mentioned, the dad scenario. I think the players give him more of a hard time than me.
What was it like growing up with, or him growing up, because he had the same ambitions as you, and how do you handle that as a father in terms of keeping his feet on the ground? Because only like 1% of players make it. He's done well to play for, to get signed by Peterborough. Being a footballer yourself, were you kind of well placed to keep his feet on the ground, do you think?
I let him try to get on with it as much as I could, but I think the advice that I gave him, again, is one of those things like, it's just my dad. When he spoke to his other managers and he asked my opinion on something, so I give him my opinion and he didn't always agree with it. I said, well, go and speak to your manager. So he went to speak to his manager. He rang me afterwards and said, what did the manager said? He said, yeah, what you said. so I've got a bit of experience in what we were doing. But when he first started playing, I was probably a little bit too harsh on him because I didn't want to be seen as giving him a free ride. But I've got a lot better now because obviously his reputation speaks for itself now, and he doesn't really have to prove anything to anybody else, just to himself.
Do you think he'll get back up the ladder? He's obviously talented. Do you think he can get
I don't know. It's what he wants to do. He's having a really good season this year at Baseford. He's put in some really good performances, but no, I don't know. He's honest answer. If anybody comes calling, that's something between myself, the chairman, and Callum. But no, I don't know what he wants to do.
So, in terms of you as the manager, can you take a little bit of Brian Clough? I probably guess you probably can't, but can you take a bit from Harry Bassett?
I think you can take some of Brian Clough on how he treated people.
Yeah.
First things first, he treated people as human beings, and I'd like to think that my management skills are good. I've learnt a lot from him. You take some structure that Harry did within the training session as well, which I really liked. I like the structure. You take some of Frank on, and how we develop in the team and everything else. And you take some of David Platt as well, I presume.
Yeah.
So you take a little bit of everything. I think it just all goes into a big pot, but you have to come out as yourself. I don't think you can try to be anybody else. I think you learn from experiences and gain from experiences that you've had, and try and implement onto other people now.
I'll go back on a bit of a tangent and come back to that, because when you look at Frank, he came in after Brian Clough and he did an incredible job, because you look at Man United and Arsenal now and how hard it is, when the emperor moves on and the new king comes in type thing. How did Frank do that, do you think, at Forest?
By being himself, I think, for one, and signing good players for two. And having people around him that knew how Frank wanted to work. Obviously, Frank had been in management and everything else before, but this was a big step, and there were some big shoes to fill. And from what he did, he made it his own for the time that he was there. And like I say, signing good players and having a good formula and playing well normally helps.
Yeah. So back to yourself as a manager. Do you find you can talk to players now the same way your manager spoke to you, or has society changed, have players changed? Do you have to, because it's kind of the stereotypical thing, you have to handle players with kid gloves these days. Do you think that's fair or not?
I think our level's a little bit less prima donna-ish than, from the Premier League especially. I do speak to players one-on-one, and I do speak to players what I class as correctly. Every now and again there are some expletives if a half-time situation comes around and things need fixing, but I'm generally not that person. I think the biggest change we had was, obviously, when I was an apprentice, you can't do what you were doing then to an apprentice. Obviously now we have a code of conduct and everything at Baseford, and running the academy, and our coaches adhere to as well, that you're protective of the kids that are in there. There wasn't much protection back in the mid-80s, shall we say.
A few kind of quick-fire-ish ones to finish. You mentioned Stan was the best player you played with. I mean, who was just the maddest player you played with at Forest?
The maddest player?
Because people talk about how Andy Johnson would have been maybe before your time, but there's names like that.
Tank was crackers as well. Alan Rogers was crackers. I see Tank on social media, and I've heard Tank on podcasts as well. Tank was crackers. Yeah, and together they were worse. Yeah.
Best character you played with, or best mate at the club, and that kind of thing?
Well, my best mate was probably Colin Cooper. That's a big character, Mark Crossley. Still speak to Mark, still speak to Colin. So probably best mate Colin, big character Norm.
Do you keep in touch with a lot of those former teammates, or do you drift apart?
Not really, we drift apart. People go and do their own things. Every now and again I catch up with Colin, catch up with Woney. Obviously he was doing really well at Burnley with Daichi. So obviously saw Norm last year because I was across at Notts with him. And now I see Norm on his walks, which are brilliant, on social media. So they're the ones I probably speak to the most.
Do you think if you were all lumped in a room together, would it all be like it was yesterday?
Absolutely. We get together occasionally. I think also I speak to Gemmo a lot, and Gemmo, I think they're trying to organise an anniversary for the Nigel Jemson Cup final against Oldham, as it's known in 1990. So if we all do get together, one of those kinds of evenings, there's not much chat to the wife, shall we say. We're normally just together and mucking about as normal. What
was your career high point, do you think?
Wowzers. Captain in the club in the Premier League was one. Making my debut obviously is another one, and captain England under 21s is probably in a different tiering system. Maybe captain in my country was probably number one.
Low point, I mean, I guess leaving would be one of them, obviously.
Relegation, first relegation. Leaving's not that big a bind for me. Like I say, it was inevitable at some point, but the first relegation was really tough.
Was that a big shock? Because, you started that season, no one would have predicted that Forest would have been down.
It just got gradually worse. I think the league changed, football changed. and we didn't adapt, as quickly as we should have done. And like I said, the year after when Frank came in, we adapted very, very well. So probably the low point is the first relegation. Yeah.
Last one. Do you wish that you could play at the top level now? Because I'm sure you made a good living, but the money in the game now is just mental. Do you kind of sit there with a little bit of not annoyance, I don't know what the right word would be, but do you think, why couldn't I have played at this time?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I'd be telling Porkies if I said no. Envious probably. Yeah, envious. Probably played 20 years too early. But like I say, I had a good career, played some really good football clubs, played with a lot of good people, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. But these people are really fortunate what they do now. And
management's it for you? You think this is what you love? Management and coaching. This is your
for me
thing?
now.
Yeah.
I think I'm too old to play now, Matt.
But I mean, for the rest of your career, you'll stay in football for good now as a manager. That's your ambition, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, and like I say, and I'm learning as I go along still. Obviously at a new club and what our new ambitions are, but like I say, stability and reassurance that the club will survive is our main focus.
Cool. Well, we wish you all the best, Steve.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks very much, everyone. If anyone wants to leave us a review, that would really help on iTunes. More stars, the better. 5 would be good. 4 we take. We probably don't want it too many lower than that, but it does make a big difference. YouTube, subscribe, give us a rating, give us some good comments. The comments from the first episode were really good, so we're really grateful for that. So yeah, we'll be back next week. I'm not sure who will be in the chair, but we're really grateful for Steve, and thanks for watching or listening, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.